Hey, story lovers! For more inspiring, shocking, and emotional tales, make sure to subscribe to Dream Nest Stories.
It was a chilly winter afternoon, and the bustling streets of New York City were alive with the hum of life. Among the crowd, an elderly man named Henry shuffled along, his weathered face etched with lines of hardship. His clothes were tattered and layered against the cold, but the icy wind still cut through him. Henry's stomach growled in protest, a constant reminder of the hunger he had endured for days. He passed by restaurants with warm lights spilling onto the street, their delicious aromas taunting him. After much hesitation, he stopped in front of one, a high-end, luxurious restaurant with a glittering chandelier visible from the window. The establishment was known for its elite clientele and its strict no-tolerance policy toward anyone who didn't fit the image. But desperation outweighed pride, and Henry slowly pushed open the door. Tables draped in fine linens, waitstaff gliding gracefully between diners, and the soft clinking of glasses underscoring quiet conversations. Henry stood near the entrance, feeling out of place, but mustering the courage to approach a waiter. "Excuse me," he said, his voice hoarse and hesitant. "I was wondering if you might have any leftovers, or something small to spare." The waiter, a tall man with an air of arrogance, looked Henry up and down with thinly veiled disdain. "We don't serve charity here," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a fine dining establishment. Perhaps you should try a soup kitchen." The word stung, but Henry wasn't ready to give up. "Please," he implored softly, his hands trembling. "I haven't eaten in days. I'll do anything. Wash dishes, clean floors, just for a small plate of food." The waiter rolled his eyes and motioned to the restaurant manager, a stern man in a tailored suit who approached with a frown. "What's going on here?" the manager demanded. "This man is loitering and begging for food," the waiter replied, as if Henry were nothing more than a nuisance. The manager's expression hardened. "We don't tolerate disruptions. Leave, or I'll have to call security." Humiliated, Henry bowed his head and turned to leave. As he reached the door, murmurs from nearby tables followed him, some disapproving of his presence, others pitying but silent. He glanced back one last time, his eyes reflecting a mix of despair and resignation. But just as he stepped outside, someone else was stepping in. A tall, composed figure, dressed in an impeccably tailored coat, walked through the doorway. Barron Trump. He noticed the commotion, the old man's hunched posture, and the disdainful glares of the restaurant staff. Without hesitation, Barron approached Henry. "Sir, are you all right?" Barron asked, his voice calm and filled with genuine concern. Henry looked up, startled. I'm fine," he lied, his voice wavering. But Barron could see the truth in the man's eyes. He glanced back toward the staff, his expression shifting to one of quiet authority. "Let's get you something to eat," Barron said, placing a reassuring hand on Henry's shoulder. At that moment, the restaurant manager stepped forward, his earlier arrogance now replaced with unease. "Mr. Trump, I didn't realize." But Barron cut him off. "You didn't realize what?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. "That this man is a human being who deserves kindness and respect." The dining room fell silent, all eyes on the young man standing tall against the oppressive behavior of the staff. Henry looked up at Barron with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief as the young Trump led him back inside the restaurant. The restaurant fell into an uneasy silence, the soft clinking of utensils against plates ceasing as everyone turned their attention to Barron Trump and the elderly man. Henry, his clothes worn and his frame thin, appeared out of place in the upscale establishment. Yet Barron's commanding presence made it clear that he belonged at the table just as much as anyone else. "Come, sit here," Barron said gently, guiding Henry to a table near the window. The elderly man hesitated, his eyes filled with gratitude and uncertainty. "I don't want to be a bother," Henry stammered. "You're not a bother," Barron replied firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You're my guest now." The restaurant staff exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to react. The same waiter, who had dismissed Henry earlier, approached cautiously. "Mr. Trump," he began, his voice shaky, "are you sure?" "I don't think I asked for your opinion," Barron interrupted, his calm tone carrying an unmistakable edge. "What I want is for you to bring the finest meal this restaurant has to offer, and I want it served now." The waiter nodded quickly, his face pale. "Of course, sir," he said, hurrying off toward the kitchen. Henry sat down slowly, his hands trembling as he rested them on the table. He looked at Barron, a mix of disbelief and gratitude in his eyes. No one's ever done something like this for me, he said softly. Barron sat across from him, his posture relaxed but his eyes serious. Everyone deserves respect, he said, and a hot meal. The room buzzed with hushed whispers as other diners exchanged glances. Many appeared uncomfortable, their earlier judgmental stares now replaced with guilt or curiosity. A few even seemed to recognize the lesson unfolding before them. 14 minutes later, the waiter returned with a tray laden with dishes. A succulent roast, buttery mashed potatoes, and a warm loaf of bread. The aroma was heavenly, and the presentation immaculate. Far more effort than the restaurant typically put into it. The waiter placed the food in front of Henry, avoiding eye contact, and quickly retreated. "Please eat," Barron encouraged. Henry hesitated only briefly before picking up his fork. The first bite brought tears to his eyes. The warmth of the food, the richness of the flavors, it was more than just nourishment. It was a reminder of humanity, something he hadn't felt in years. It's amazing," Henry said, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't need to," Barron replied, offering a reassuring smile. "But if you want to, just promise me one thing. Never let anyone make you feel like you don't matter." Henry nodded, tears streaming down his face as he continued eating. As the meal progressed, Barron asked Henry about his life. The elderly man shared fragments of his story. A life once filled with love and stability, a career that had given him purpose, and a family he had adored, but misfortunes had struck one after the other. The loss of his wife, an illness that drained his savings, and eventually, the streets that became his only home. Despite it all, Henry had never given up hope. "I keep thinking that maybe tomorrow will be better," he admitted. "But sometimes, it's hard to believe it." "Tomorrow can only get better if we help each other today," Barron said. "That's why I'm here." The room grew quieter as Barron's words reached the ears of everyone present. Even those who had initially dismissed Henry now seemed to reevaluate their judgments. Some patrons subtly motioned for the staff to bring Henry more water, while others looked down at their plates, their faces reflecting a mixture of guilt and introspection. Once Henry finished his meal, Barron stood and addressed the room. "This man came here for food, not charity," he began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "He came here because he's human, just like the rest of us, and no one should be turned away for that." The staff froze, their eyes glued to Barron. The patrons listened in silence, their gazes shifting between him and Henry. "If this world is going to change, it starts with moments like this," Barron continued. "It starts with kindness, with compassion, and with the understanding that dignity isn't a privilege. It's a right." The entire room seemed to hold its breath as Barron's words settled over them. Even the waiter, who had initially refused to serve Henry, looked humbled, his head bowed. Henry stood, his frail hands gripping the edge of the table for support. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not just for the food, but for seeing me." "You've always been worth seeing," Barron replied softly. And with that, the tension in the room began to dissipate. What had started as an act of rejection had turned into a moment of redemption. For everyone involved, the next few days were a whirlwind for Henry as Barron continued to provide support and guidance. Barron made sure that Henry's needs were met, offering not only a safe place to stay, but also the tools and connections to rebuild his life. One morning, Henry woke up to find a carefully arranged package outside his hotel room door. Inside, there were fresh clothes, a pair of sturdy shoes, and a handwritten note from Barron. "Henry, a new day means a new chance. Keep moving forward. You've got this." "Barron." The simple gesture brought Henry to tears. He had spent years feeling invisible, as though his existence didn't matter. Yet here was someone who not only noticed him, but also believed in him. Barron didn't stop there. He had contacted several local charities and organizations to help Henry take the next steps toward stability. He arranged for a job interview at a nearby community center that was known for giving people second chances. The day of the interview, Barron met Henry in the lobby. Henry was dressed in the new clothes Barron had provided, his posture more confident than it had been in years. But there was still a hint of nervousness in his eyes. "What if I mess up?" Henry asked hesitantly. "You won't," Barron said firmly. "And even if you do, it's not the end. Mistakes are part of the process. You've already done the hardest part, deciding to try again." Barron personally accompanied Henry to the community center, much to the surprise of the staff. When they realized who was walking through their doors, the whispers started. But Barron wasn't there for attention. He stayed quietly in the background, letting Henry take the spotlight. The interview was a success. Henry's years of experience and genuine passion for helping others shone through. By the end of the meeting, he was offered a part-time role assisting with the center's outreach programs. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it was a start, and Henry couldn't have been happier. As they left the center, Henry turned to Barron, his face beaming with gratitude. "I don't know how I'll ever thank you for this," he said. "You've already thanked me," Barron replied with a smile, "by believing in yourself." Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, the story of Barron's intervention had taken on a life of its own. The video of the incident had gone viral, drawing attention from media outlets and sparking discussions online about kindness, privilege, and the power of small actions. The restaurant staff, who had initially dismissed Henry without a second thought, found themselves under intense scrutiny. Customers began leaving comments on their social media pages, urging them to treat every person who walked through their doors with dignity and respect. Inspired by the backlash, and perhaps a bit of guilt, the restaurant owner decided to make a change. They announced a new initiative to provide free meals to the homeless every week, partnering with local shelters to ensure the program reached those who needed it most. The ripple effect of Barron's actions extended far beyond what he could have imagined. Henry's story became a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles, reminding them that it's never too late to turn things around. But for Barron, the most rewarding part was seeing Henry regain his sense of self-worth. One evening, as they sat together in the hotel lobby, Henry shared something he hadn't talked about in years. "Before everything fell apart, I used to volunteer at shelters," he said. "I thought I'd lost that part of myself. But now, I think I'm ready to give back again." Barron's smile widened. "That's the spirit," he said. Henry wasn't just surviving, he was finding his purpose again. Months passed, and Henry's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. With his new job at the community center, he had found stability, purpose, and a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. The once weary man who had stumbled into a restaurant, seeking a simple meal, now walked with confidence, his head held high. But Henry didn't stop at rebuilding his own life. Determined to pay forward the kindness he'd received, he threw himself into his work at the center. He became a mentor for others facing homelessness, offering support and hope to those who felt lost, just as Barron had done for him. One day, Henry approached Barron with an idea that had been brewing in his mind. "I want to start a program at the center," he said. "Something that connects people who've been through hard times with others who can help. You know, a way to turn their stories into strength." Barron's eyes lit up. "That sounds incredible," he said. "What do you need to get it started?" "Just a little help with the first steps," Henry admitted. "Consider it done," Barron replied without hesitation. Over the next few weeks, the two worked together to bring Henry's vision to life. They called the program Second Chances, a name that reflected its mission perfectly. It started small, with local volunteers and businesses chipping in to provide resources like job training, housing assistance, and counseling. Word of the program spread quickly, thanks in part to the viral story of Henry's encounter with Barron. Donations poured in, and soon, Second Chances grew into a full-fledged movement. The restaurant where it all began even held a fundraiser to support the cause, their staff eager to make amends for the way they had treated Henry. At the program's official launch event, Henry stood before a packed crowd, his voice steady as he shared his story. "I thought my life was over," he said, "but one act of kindness reminded me that it wasn't. It gave me the strength to try again, and now I want to give that same strength to others." As the crowd erupted into applause, Barron watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. He hadn't just helped Henry, he had sparked a chain reaction of compassion that was changing countless lives. After the event, Henry approached Barron with tears in his eyes. "I don't know where I'd be if it weren't for you," he said. "You would have found your way," Barron replied, his voice filled with warmth. "I just gave you a little push." Their bond had grown into a deep friendship, one built on mutual respect and a shared belief in the power of kindness. Years later, Second Chances became a nationally recognized organization, helping thousands of people reclaim their lives. And every time Henry spoke about its origins, he made sure to mention the young man who had turned his darkest day into a turning point. As for Barron, he continued to use his platform to promote causes close to his heart, always leading with humility and empathy. The viral story of his interaction with Henry remained a testament to the idea that no act of kindness is ever too small to make a difference. And for everyone who had doubted or underestimated him, Barron's actions were a powerful reminder. True strength lies not in power or wealth, but in the courage to show compassion even when it's least expected.